What if the greatest wave of your life was the one you never saw coming? What if I told you one of the greatest surfers of all time was found dead, alone, in a hotel room, in a city he never planned to be in? Andy Irons wasn't just a surfer. He was a warrior with salt in his veins, a three-time world champion, a hometown hero in Hawaii, and the only man who could stare down Kelly Slater and win. He was a force of nature, a Hawaiian prodigy who battled the fiercest waves and the fiercest rivals and still came out on top. But behind the fame, behind the trophies, was a man quietly fighting something much darker. But on November 2nd, 2010, Andy was found dead, alone, in a Dallas hotel room. No beach, no surfboard, no goodbye. Why was he even there? What happened in room 324? And how did someone so full of life get taken by something that had nothing to do with waves? What you're about to hear is raw, real, and heartbreaking. Because the ride that brought Andy to greatness is also what brought him to the edge. We're diving deep into the final 48 hours of his life to piece together the truth. Keep watching till the end, because nothing about this story is as simple as it seems. Before the mystery, before the tragedy, Andy Irons was a name that echoed through every lineup around the world. Born and raised in Kauai, Hawaii, Andy grew up with salt in his veins and fire in his heart. He wasn't just a surfer, he was a warrior on water. He burst onto the professional scene in the late 90s, but it was the early 2000s when he truly carved his legacy. Andy didn't just win, he dominated. He clinched 3 consecutive ASP World titles from 2002 to 2004, going head-to-head with the iconic Kelly Slater in a rivalry that defined an era. But Andy wasn't just revered for his victories. His raw style, fearless approach, and genuine connection to the ocean made him a fan favorite. He was surfing soul and swagger wrapped into one. Yet behind every massive wave he conquered, there were personal battles raging beneath the surface, ones the public rarely saw. To understand how a surf god ended up alone in Texas, we need to rewind to the island where it all began. Coming up next, how Andy's last surf competition set off a chain of events that led him to that Dallas hotel room. In late October 2010, Andy Irons was in Puerto Rico for the Rip Curl Pro Search, one of the biggest contests of the season. But something was off. Those close to him noticed he didn't look well. He was visibly sick, shivering, pale, drained of energy. Eventually, he pulled out of the competition entirely. Citing illness, Andy left the island abruptly, hoping to return home to Hawaii. But the route home wasn't simple. He had to make a layover in Miami and catch a connecting flight through Dallas. That's when the situation got worse. Reports suggest Andy looked unwell during the trip. Witnesses say he was sweating heavily, seemed confused, and looked physically weak. By the time he landed in Dallas on November 1st, he was too sick to board his next flight. Instead, he checked into the Grand Hyatt Hotel, connected to the airport to rest and recover. Andy checked in to rest. But what happened behind that door? What was waiting in room 324? The details may shock you. Room 324 at the Grand Hyatt wasn't supposed to be anything more than a layover. But by the next morning, it became the scene of a tragedy that rocked the sports world. At around 10 a.m. on November 2nd, hotel staff, concerned that Andy Irons hadn't checked out, entered the room. What they found was heartbreaking. Andy was lying in bed, unresponsive, with the TV still on. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. He had passed away sometime during the night. Almost instantly, rumors started to fly. Some said he'd been battling dengue fever, a mosquito-borne illness he'd reportedly contracted in Puerto Rico. Others whispered about drugs, mental health issues, and personal demons. The public wanted answers, but there were none. Not yet. The hotel room contained several prescription medications which only fueled speculation. Authorities said there were no signs of foul play. Still, fans and fellow surfers were left stunned. This wasn't just a random athlete. This was Andy Irons, at the top of his game, with a wife and unborn child waiting for him back home. What really happened in that room? Was it illness, overdose, a perfect storm of both? And then the truth came out. The medical report revealed what really took Andy Irons. 6 months after Andy's death, the Tarrant County Medical Examiner released the full autopsy and toxicology report, and it confirmed what many feared, but few fully understood. The official cause of death: cardiac arrest due to severe coronary artery disease. But that was only part of the story. Toxicology found a mix of substances in his system: methadone, cocaine, Xanax, Ambien, and traces of other medications. No one drug was enough to be fatal, but together they painted a picture of a man in crisis, physically and emotionally. His heart, already compromised by undiagnosed disease, couldn't handle the combination. The Irons family later confirmed what had long been whispered. Andy struggled with bipolar disorder and substance abuse. He had been trying to manage it quietly, off the radar, out of the public eye. But the lifestyle of constant travel, performance pressure, and hidden pain proved overwhelming. The report didn't just close a chapter, it opened a door into the harsh reality of life behind the scenes. If this story's already hitting you hard, pause for a second. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold stories from the edge. Because sharing this might help someone else who's quietly struggling too. Next up, how the surf world responded, and why Andy's death forced a painful conversation that was long overdue. The news hit like a tidal wave. A global icon, gone too soon. But while fans mourned a legend, Andy's family mourned a husband and a soon-to-be father. At home in Hawaii, Lindy Irons was waiting for Andy to return. She was pregnant with their first child, a baby boy Andy was excited to meet. Instead of a joyful reunion, she got a phone call that shattered her world. Lindy later spoke about those final days, revealing the emotional toll Andy's struggles had taken, not just on him, but on everyone who loved him. She described his highs, his deep lows, and his determination to get better. He wanted to be a great dad. He wanted to change. The surfing world paid tribute in every way imaginable. Paddle-outs were held across the globe. Kelly Slater dedicated his 10th world title to Andy. And in Hanalei Bay, Andy's home break, thousands gathered to say goodbye in a powerful, emotional memorial. But the grief didn't fade easily. His death sparked a much-needed dialogue in the surf community about mental health, addiction, and how much pain often hides behind the smiles and medals. Coming up, how Andy's legacy is still shaping the sport and saving lives. Andy Irons left behind more than trophies. He left behind a legacy of raw honesty and transformation. In the years following his death, Lindy Irons became a powerful advocate, helping to release the documentary Andy Irons, Kissed by God. The film exposed Andy's battle with bipolar disorder and addiction, giving fans and athletes alike permission to speak openly about their own struggles. His son Axel, born just weeks after Andy passed, has grown up in the water, carrying the spirit of his father's fearless energy. Tributes continue through the Andy Irons Foundation, which supports youth and mental health programs. Andy's story, once whispered in sadness, is now a rallying cry for awareness and change. Next, a special bonus: how other surf icons quietly face similar demons. Surfing looks like paradise, sun, waves, freedom. But behind the sun-kissed lifestyle lies intense pressure, long travel schedules, isolation, and the constant chase for perfection. And Andy Irons wasn't the only one carrying that weight. Many pro surfers have quietly battled depression, addiction, or mental health challenges. Bruce Irons, Andy's brother, later opened up about his own struggles. Other legends, including Tom Carroll and Mick Fanning, have publicly discussed anxiety, burnout, and the need for therapy. The surfing community has begun to shift. Mental health is no longer a taboo. Organizations, surf brands, and athletes are speaking out, offering support, and building safer spaces for the next generation of riders. What happened to Andy sparked a wave of change, one that's still growing. So what do we take from this? Let's bring it all together with one powerful truth. Andy Irons lived fast, loved deeply, and surfed with a fire that inspired millions. His death was a tragedy, but his life and what came after continues to make waves. If Andy's story stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and tell someone what you felt. What part of Andy's story hit you hardest? Because we're not just here to tell stories, we're here to change what happens next.